They are a different sort of person than the word-oriented person. I think thinking in words may be an artifact of writing and print, and may have been most intensified in the last 1,000 years. I mean, sensory ratios are incredibly subject to cultural modification. As an example of what I mean by that, St. Augustine, to prove his piety, they would open a book of scripture in front of him, and without making a sound, he would examine it for a few minutes, and then they would close the book and question him, and he was able to discuss what was written there on the page. He was the only man in Europe, in other words, who could read silently, and it was thought a miracle. Well, we all read silently and think nothing of it. So I think the mind is very malleable and the imprint of culture very deep. This is an area where we are very naive, how our languages affect our view of the world.
This is typical Terence McKenna. His language, his use of language is really sort of multi-layered and deep, and you can listen to him a dozen times and find new things every time you listen to him. But some of the things he brought out there, have you ever wondered why, when you're a child, everything is just wonderful? You've got this childlike wonder about everything. And he just told you what happens. You collapse reality down to a word. Just think for a moment about the hummingbird. As a child, you see this beautiful thing, iridescent colours, just hovering in the air and making these really precise movements, and it's really beautiful and amazing, right? And then it gets turned into a word, bird. Bird does not capture the experience. The word does not capture the experience. So what we've done is we've put a linguistic layer between us and reality. So that layer doesn't express the experience of reality. It just turns it into word. So now the child thinks, sees a hummingbird, doesn't see the wonder anymore, just sees bird. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we think in words now. And the other interesting thing he said was that when you have a trip on a psychoactive substance, you do start thinking in images now. That's the experience. It's you thinking in images and not in words anymore. And that's why it's so weird. We're not used to thinking that way. You're reverting to your original language, your original default settings. And for some people it's too much. We're so ingrained in this idea of thinking in words. When those walls come down, and as I said, language doesn't work the way we think it does. It can switch on and switch off, and in all different languages. And I think it's because of the subconscious knows all languages. So the point is, if you restrict the language, right, you restrict thought. If you think in words, if you restrict the language you've got available to you, you literally restrict the amount of thought the limit of thought you've got. Okay. When you have a trip on a psychoactive substance, it's literally dropping the barrier that language creates, the layer, interpretive layer of language that literally separates us from reality. And when that's dropped, then we literally see reality for what it actually is. And that's where the childlike wonder comes back. So why you have this almost euphoric experience on psychoactive drugs, because you see life as it really is.